Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my March TBR. So, if you've been around, you know TBRs are pretty new on this channel. In the way that I'm doing them currently, which is I just randomly, not randomly, but like I pick the books that I am feeling that I want to read in the upcoming month, and if I get to them, then I get to them, and that's great. If I don't, then that's okay. Maybe I'll push them on to another month. And honestly, it's not going too badly. I have read 3 out of the 5 books that I picked for my February TBR. I am planning on picking up the 4th one, and then the 5th one is a graphic novel that I am still interested in, but it's not going to take me very long to read. So I think that the chances are good that I'm actually going to be able to finish it, and I'm pretty excited about that. In terms of my upcoming plans for my March TBR, a couple of things, well, I guess just one thing to mention is that if you are following it at all, G from Book Roast has been doing a replacement for her magical readathon, and it is the orilium path. She's still calling it the magical readathon, though it's just a different thing that she has completely come up with as an original storyline this time, whereas before it was Harry Potter based. And it's so good. So back in September, we did the novice path, which was you only had to do 2 prompts. She gave you a list of other ones, and it's essentially like you traveling along the novice path to reach the Orilium Academy. And now she has announced that it is the gearing up for the real magical readathon. She's hoping to be doing it in April. It's possible it won't happen. She's dealing with a lot of health issues, but she has announced a week-long readathon for gearing up for the magical readathon, and that's I think the 16th, the 14th, the 14th through the 20th of March. But it's not like it's permanently stuck on those dates. If you can't make it, if you need to extend it, that's okay. It's pretty much just to get everybody excited for the real magical readathon that will be coming up. So, all of that is to say that I did complete a lot of the things for the magical readathon back in September. Then I totally forgot about building my character, which is a thing that we were supposed to be doing, but fortunately I didn't stop reading, so I have lots of stuff that I read between September and now that I can use to have built up my character. And I will go into that when I start talking about my prompts that I have to do for the gearing up for the magical readathon thing. But first, let me talk about the 3 books that aren't related to the magical readathon, and we'll jump into the rest of that stuff later. So, I have been trying to read more of the graphic novels that I have, and I picked Deadly Class for my February TBR. I have not, as of right now, read it yet, but I do plan to. This is the last week of February that I'm filming this in, so I do have plenty of time still. But now it's going to be Monstrous for March. I have had this for a while. I plan on finishing it. I have had plans on finishing it for a while. I have never started it. Well, I read the first page, maybe. And the artwork is absolutely beautiful. I have no excuses for not having finished it. I just had not prioritized it, and now we're doing that. So I plan on reading Monstrous in March. All I know is that it's like steampunky and art deco, and it follows a teenage survivor of a war. Other than that, I don't know. I don't know anything about it. But the art style is absolutely gorgeous. And Marjorie Liu is somebody who I have read romance novels from before, and I have really enjoyed them, so I have high hopes for this. Next up, and I may regret this next month, but we'll see, it's finally time for me to get around to Ruin by John Gwynne. I have tried a couple of times in the last year to pick this up. I don't really know what has been stopping me, but when I haven't been feeling The Faithful and the Fallen, I have picked up an audiobook instead, and that might be what I just have to do in the month of March. I don't know what it is. I love The Faithful and the Fallen. The first 2 books, I really enjoyed them. They had their slow moments, but for overall, I really enjoyed the entire storyline and the characters. So hopefully that's going to be the same way for Ruin. I have heard this book is going to emotionally destroy me, but, you know, I guess that's kind of what we're all here for when we read a lot of these big epic fantasies. I don't really expect everybody to make it to the end, or at least I shouldn't. And yeah. So Ruin, it's time. It's time to move on and finally check a series off of my list of series that I'm currently in the middle of. It's time to keep going, and I'm finally gonna read Ruin next month. I'm saying it, it's gonna happen. The 3rd book that is not a part of the magical readathon TBR, although it could be because there's blades all over it, so I don't know why I didn't pick this one, but I'll get to that in a minute. From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Everybody was obsessed with this book last year. The year before? Last year. I'm not really sure when this came out. It says 2020, so must have been last year. This was everywhere, and everybody was really, really into it, and then I know a lot of people didn't really like the third book. I don't know how it's gonna go. This particular copy was sent to me by my cousin, who had been raving about it, and I hadn't read it yet, so Angie, if you're watching, thank you very, very much. I still haven't read this, and I am very sorry, but I will get to it next month. I'm saying it, it's going to happen. I have an ebook of this to make it a little bit more portable for me, because this is a chunky romance. Like, it's 600 pages of fantasy romance, and I don't think that their story actually wraps up in this. Like, I think that the story of these two continues on throughout the rest of this series, so I don't really know what to expect out of this. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Everybody loves this for a reason, right? Like, I think that one thing that has stopped me from reading it over the last year has just been I've been like terrified that it's been overhyped. Also, I don't love the main character's name. I don't know what it is about it, but her name is Poppy, and I'm not feeling it. But maybe that'll change when I actually read this, and I'm looking forward to finally joining on the hype train. Okay, so before I move into the last two books, I am going to talk to you guys about what I've been doing for building my character for the Orilium Academy readathon. So this is the Scholar's Key, and she has a printable of this. If you go to G's video that I'm going to link down below, she has an entire Google Drive where you can build up your character to do this. And so this is what mine looks like. I am cheap, so I didn't print it in color. I'm just gonna read it off to you guys. If you had been watching me last fall when I did the novice path, you'll know that I ended up joining the House of the Arcane by the choices that I took. So I am in the House of the Arcane, the calling for which is an Archmage. And as for my background, I decided to go with Urban because that's what I was feeling lately. And the reading prompt in order to have urban as a part of your character is to read a book that takes place in a city or a town. I have read a lot of those, but I'm just going to go with stuff that I've done recently just to be consistent, and I have been reading the Demigods of San Francisco series over the last couple of days. Sin and Chocolate is the first one in that, and it takes place in San Francisco, which is the definition of a city, so that takes care of urban. Next up, the province that I am from, I chose Dayrune, which is like a desert city, but it's full of alchemists and science, and that is eventually what I would like to go for and what the House of the Arcane is known for. And so I chose Dayrune, and the prompt for this was to read something with a desert setting. It took a lot for me to find one over the last several months that had anything to do with the desert, but The Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder is something that I read last month, and there is probably several chapters like in the middle of it where they are in fact trudging through a desert, so it counts. Next, I chose The Heritage of the Earthlings. I don't really know how to describe them. You guys are going to have to go and look into her Google Drive and learn all about all of this stuff for yourself because I don't want to make this too long. But I did choose to be an Earthling. I'm leaning towards Air Earthling, but I haven't really picked an element yet because if we're going to go back to Avatar, I know G's a really big Avatar The Last Airbender fan. I never really connected with like airbending as a bending skill. I really would have preferred like firebending or waterbending, but like the Earthlings, the Air Earthlings have wings, and I really like that. So I think I'm leaning towards Air Earthling. The prompt for which is to read a book that contains any kind of elemental magic. Once again, I'm going back to the Demigods of San Francisco series because Kieran, the main male protagonist, the love interest, is a demigod of Poseidon, which means that he can control water, which is not the element that I'm going for. But it didn't say to pick the element that you were going for. It just said any element, so it counts. The other one that I could have counted for this, though, I read the first two books in the Queen of Blood series, the Queens of Renthia, that's what it's called. I read the first two books in the Queens of Renthia series, where there are, like, spirits that are literally elemental spirits, which would have worked even if I had wanted air elementals, because they have air elementals specifically in those books. And now we get into the three prompts that I think that are going to have to be for my gearing up. I think that this is a part of the gearing up portions. So for these three prompts, I only picked books for two of them. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But the first two prompts are for me to be able to get a conduit for my magic in this magical readathon. And my House of the Arcane has the ability to get a crystal or an orb. But I also really wanted a sword, just because I wanted a sword. And so I decided I'm going to do prompts for both sword and for crystal. So the prompt for sword is any book that has a blade on the cover. Now, I have several of the books that I chose have blades on the cover, like I mentioned earlier. From Blood and Ash has a blade. Ruin is a spear, but that's technically a blade. There is a blade on the end of the spear. But for this prompt specifically, I chose Stormcaster by Cinda Williams Chima. This is one of the books that I have yet to read by her. I have talked about the Seven Realms series ad nauseum on my channel before. I love the Seven Realms series. It is fantastic. If you haven't read it, it is a YA fantasy that you absolutely need to give a try. It doesn't have a super YA feel to it. The world building is great. The romance, the characters, it's all great. This is part of the Shattered Realms series, and if you know anything about the Seven Realms series and the beginning of the Shattered Realms series, you may know why it's taken me so long to read these books, and we're getting there. This is book 3, so I read the first 2, and I need to move on. I need to finish this. I need to just get on with it. I have gotten over the reason that was the cause of my hesitancy for starting the series, and it's finally time for me to just get through with it. That sounds like I'm not enthusiastic. I am still enthusiastic about it. It's just I can't really talk about it without spoiling it, so I'm just gonna stop there. Anyway, this is book 3 in the Shattered Realms. He's holding a sword. You can see there is a sword in his hand. So it's a blade. It counts. The prompt for crystal was anything that has a crystal in the name of the book or the series title. This one was harder for me, and I'm gonna stretch it just a little bit because technically it's not a crystal, but we're just gonna work with it, okay? I picked Jade War. I finally read Jade City last month. I was obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with it. It was phenomenal. Jade War is book 2, and I am so excited to get back into this world with these characters that I fell in love with in Jade City. This is an Asian-inspired fantasy that takes place in a world that is very urban, but all of it revolves around the use of jade as a magic system. And it's phenomenal. The politics, like the crime, family, everything, all of the characters, it was just so great, and I fell in love with it, and I can't wait to move on. So, jade, technically, probably not a crystal. I think it's just a stone, but I'm gonna make it work because I literally can't think of anything else that has any crystal features. So we're just gonna go with jade. Jade works. The third prompt has to do with my guild's legacy. Now, in the magical readathon, your guild has some kind of legacy that it passes down to all of its members. Mine is a choice of several different items, and in this, the items last as long as you are alive. So, like, you get to keep this item until you die, pretty much. And for me, out of the choices that I was given, if I want to be an air elemental, I figured this one would be the most useful, and that is a pocket dimension. If you play D&D, I mean, it's essentially like a bag of holding, which is pretty cool. And as an air elemental, if I'm going to fly around all of the place, then, like, I need something to hold all my stuff and not take up a bunch of weight while it's doing so. So I picked Pocket Dimension, and the prompt for Pocket Dimension is to read an ebook. And this is why I haven't picked specifically a book for this, because I read ebooks literally all the time. So anything that I read in ebook form is going to count towards this. I'm not really worried about picking something specifically, so we're just going to wait and see how that shakes out next month. But those are the books that I have chosen, all 5 of them. I'm looking at this stack, and honestly, it's a little intimidating. Those are some chunky books. I had thought that picking from Blood and Ash because it's a romance would make it a little bit easier on me, but honestly, it's one of the biggest books in the stack, so you know, I don't know. It's making me a little bit nervous. We'll see. We'll see how next month goes. That might be one of the months that I get over ambitious with this whole TBR thing. That's what I have planned for the month of March. I guess we'll see how it goes next month. But that's it for me today, guys. So don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me. While you're down there, don't forget to check out my description box. You'll see rep codes for both Hello Lovely Box and for Unplugged Book Box. Underneath that, you're going to see links to my Goodreads, my Twitter, and my Instagram in case you guys wanted to follow me on any of those. But that's it for me today, guys, so I'll talk to you in my next one. Bye!